as entrepreneurs, we have a very different point of view of looking at work. See, as a business owner, I think there is not a single day where you're not trying to battle a storm. So we want to reach 1 million retailers. That is our internal goal. And I think one of the big challenges that I see with Indian communication at times is that we overly give in more importance to emotions rather than logic. Because I think like Indian market has a big myth that instead of sugar, eat jaggery. So what are the consumers not going to pay us for? Doing fancy jargons for the sake of it is not going to be great value. But our colleges don't teach us people skills very well.
Hello and welcome to the next episode of Pathfinders, the podcast series in which we bring to you the success stories from the world of business. Every week we get an entrepreneur, a promoter or a CEO to share with us the journey that they undertake and they cross obstacles on the way, and that's how the success stories are made. Today it is a great pleasure to have with us in our studios Indraneel Chitale, the managing partner of Chitale Group. He is the fourth generation entrepreneur of an 80-year-old business house that has seen success in all possible dimensions. It is going to be a really enriching session and I really look forward to it. Thank you very much, Indraneel, for the time that you spared today.
I appreciate that we could connect, and glad we are going through this podcast.
Oh wow, fantastic. I really look forward to an enriching one the next half an hour or so.
Absolutely.
And I would like to start with something that Chitale Bandhu is known for. It is a reflection of what all has happened in last so many decades, which is the quality. So quality will continue to stay as the focus area for us, for all of you going forward. But besides the industry that you are in, is there anything else that might happen in next few decades in terms of new rollouts or a diversification?
Well, I've just been inside this big transition that is happening inside the company right now, and this transition was over a period of 3 years, which was a very, very well designed process about how we merge and demerge internal companies for future growth. So we are just completing that entire transition period right now, and the coming financial year, many things will be different in the way we administer companies. But along with that, what we also know is the fact that, we will be growing at a very good CAGR, which we've continued to grow over the last 5 years as well. And when it comes to doing that, there will be a point where, how do we deploy the treasury value that we are generating every year? And what all avenues do we create it where there is going to be an avenue to create a same amount of CAGR for all the return on capital that is employed? So from that point of view, I was thinking that what's going to be a perennial consumption mechanism. So fortunately, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, they were very wise in starting with the food industry where the consumption is perennial. Yes. Like you don't have a consumer who's not going to be hungry and that way not going to consume food. Now, how do they consume your food is something that is your brand and your quality and your products. But besides that, I was just thinking that, what other avenues will be there, which will be consumed perennially. Yes. So one was the pharma and the nutraceutical side, which I believe is evolving, going much faster. Also going with the idea that, the preventive healthcare side of it is growing much faster, where people have realized that a lot can be avoided rather than, treated upon. So how do we do that is one part, and where, we've already made some smaller investments into that sector. We hoping that will grow faster. The other two avenues that I see is entertainment, because I think as long as humans exist, where we have a brain this smart, we will need something to occupy it, which is not always consuming us from a potential of existence. Right. So the ability to be entertained is something that not every animal gets. We humans have it. So how do we be in that entertainment space as well? Right. Besides the food entertainment side is something that we are thinking very, very intently. And I would also say is the media and the news side, because my belief is firmly that, the more the information available, the more informed the decisions. Yes. Now there is a debatable point that, we probably have over information coming into the world. Yeah. But I think the world will correct itself in terms of how it consumes information. So it will keep consuming. So how do we be in that sector is another sector that we have identified internally. And that's why my strategy, especially driving the family forward, and how do we envision when we'll be at 2040 is part that, we will be substantially in size, yes, not just in this division, but all the other 3 divisions that I'm mentioning.
Wow. So it looks like pretty much the drawing board is pretty much full and there is so much of strategy discussion going on internally.
And maybe I think it's now at a point where it is a little one step ahead of strategy. What we have to do is just execute, and get feedback correct and execute faster. So how do we do that is where I think my energy will be channelized, and that is what I am looking forward to being as gainfully employed in the next 15 years.
Yeah, so genetic engineering is one dimension of how technology is going to play an important role in enhancing the overall yield and efficiency. AI is another area where a lot of corporates are deploying a lot of mechanisms in enhancing overall efficiency. Share with us some examples if you have had some experiences.
I mean, I think I would say in the last 5 to 6 months, the amount of AI that I utilize on my own, just going about my day, has grown up substantially. And it's also something that is a learning process, I would say. I mean, the quality of prompts that you get to get AI to work for you is a lot of work. And you need to learn that. And I think I'm still getting better at it. I don't think so I'm fully comprehended the technology, but then I think I can make fairly good use of it. Where many of the manual tasks that I have to do, which otherwise I have to rely on people to do or ask my executive team to perform it for me, is something that AI is doing much faster. So what I've seen is that AI is actually a great productivity improver, where the tasks which are not necessarily needing too much of thought, but a good program thought and a good large language model can take care of that thought. You should try to trust it more and let it come up with many things. And where humans can be put into much more complex tasks, which we probably don't have enough time at sometimes amidst today's work life balance pressure to think about. That is where we should be focusing on. So I believe AI will be a great enabler towards the corporate future of India, where work life balance is going to be very critical.
This prompts the next question, and if I may ask, that there is a lot of debate these days going on 90 hours a week. And because you mentioned work-life balance, so I cannot resist but asking you, what is your view on this one?
As entrepreneurs, we have a very different point of view of looking at work. It is not work for us. It is something that is a very gainful employment or a gainful engagement, where we are passionately driving something out. So that's why we don't necessarily think from it as a commitment of going to work and coming back, but it is about being gainfully employed. It is not necessarily the case with every person who's working in your organization, and I think as entrepreneurs we need to accept that. If that is accepted, then we must accept that everybody will have different passions, not necessarily be full-time engaged into your passion of driving the business bigger. And that way, how do we balance it out, where whenever people are at work, they are productive, they are doing great for the organization, and whenever they are not, they are even better productive, or they are having better time to recharge, so that whenever they are back at work, they can be much more productive. So rather than just counting it in the terms of hours or days, or how much time you are committing, how impactful are you when you are at work and how you are not, is something that we all must think about. If that is given a thought, then I think the hour or the numerical debate about it should be solved.
You seem to have cracked it, because some people are still struggling with 90 hours or 70 hours, or should I come on Sundays or Saturdays or not?
Well, I've been there, done that, and I think with age I have also changed. So I think life has to happen. So many people will evolve. I will probably have a different opinion than what I had in my 20s and what I'll have in my 40s and 50s maybe.
Because you mentioned the difference between 20s and 40s, so a slightly different question but on a parallel track. Did the fact that there was a gap of almost 10-12 years between your engineering and your MBA, the one that you recently undertook about QA, did that make a big difference as compared to an engineering which is immediately followed by an MBA?
It was. And I think it was a wise move that I was able to do. And I think there was a lot of debate at that time when I decided that, let me push this a little later. So when I finished my OPM course at Harvard, I was the youngest graduate in my class at that time. And that way, the average age was about 6 to 7 years older than what I was when I passed out. And it was great for me because I sort of had a good semblance of what to expect when you are at that age and how you are looking at companies at that age. Because the people I was around had an average age which was exactly between what would be my father's age and my age. So it was a good median for me to determine that, hey, what would be somebody from that point of view thinking? What would be their ambitions? And how do you sort of look at life as you evolve? And where I think the sustenance of financiality is not around you. It is the sustenance of the impact that what you want to make. And I think it brings in a great perspective. So I think that decision worked very well in favor for me.
Any storm that you recall where you went through that storm but you came out successfully, obviously?
Well, I mean, see, as a business owner, I think there is not a single day where you're not trying to battle a storm. And I would not say that, we eventually get used to the idea that many things are going to require you to work differently, think differently, and deliver results differently.
Yes.
And that is what it is to be an entrepreneur. Because there is no predictability to your actions or challenges. How to bring that become more predictable, and how do you learn yourself as an entrepreneur that what are the polarities you swing between, and how do you want to regulate your reactions or responses to it, is something that you learn over a period of time. And I think all these experiences, which we can label as storms or challenges, I would say, they teach you and build your caliber around it. So how do we make sure that amidst challenging situation we build in better transparency, we communicate what's happening, and we actually have the ownership of the people invested into succeeding over that challenge, is where I think the skill of an entrepreneur matters. If that happens, then all of these things are always around. They'll keep happening, but then you'll tide over it, and that is how you grow businesses, I would say.
In terms of digitalization, is there an initiative whereby you are aiming for more and more of your sale, the last mile, happening over digital channels over the next 10 years instead of relying on traditional channels?
Well, I was just talking to one of the big four companies this morning. We had a good 2-hour call because they work with us on one project.
Oh, is it?
And we were looking at the data in terms of how digital businesses are going to evolve, because that is a division inside our business now, where quick commerce, e-commerce, marketplaces, all of these which are digitally enabled places for transaction are there. So as of now, as a country, we are somewhere around 9 to 11% of the total transactions happening which are digital.
Yes.
So while it's great hype, it's great numbers, it's still 9%.
Yes.
So let's assume 10% as a round figure. For all what's going to happen in the country and all the implementation of technology, all the increase in per capita income, congestion, challenges, urbanization, this number is not unlikely to cross 22%.
Okay.
So should we miss the boat in terms of that 10% going to 22%? Absolutely not. We will surely do that. But then we must not ignore that 80% of the market is still going to be non-digital.
Very interesting. So that means, let us say it reaches 22%, which means 78% of what you're going to sell will continue to rely on traditional channels. And so that means when you talk about 200,000 retail outlets being there, eventually somebody somewhere in the organization and senior enough will be responsible to continue to grow that number from 200,000 to 300,000 to eventually reach a very large number.
So we want to reach 1 million retailers. That is our internal goal. And that's why we are very bullish on certain aspects, that what is the clarity for every person working, that when it comes to the trade business, we want to be in 1 million retail points across the world, across India. We want to be present in every possible continent in the world. We want to make sure that our customers are loyal to us irrespective of the channel we are in. So we want to be an omni-channel brand. And while doing that, internally our quality assurance measure is that how do we improve the nutrition per every gram we sell is the single-minded goal that we work with as a company now.
At the time when you're looking at these numbers, which are talking about 5-fold increase in your retail presence, and at the same time making sure the quality is not compromised at all, which means a huge amount of reliance on the people who work very closely with you. At the time of hiring such people, what is that 1 or 2 qualities that you look for? Because it's a huge business after all, and you are delegating a very big part of your responsibility to them.
So I think one thing that I look particularly is also into the background of the people. I have seen that very often the house ecosystem of the candidate being recruited, especially the younger ones, matters a lot in terms of shaping their culture. Because the fact is that now, especially, we are going to see this more and more in the next 5 to 10 years, is that with the access to AI and YouTube and so many other channels, your technical qualification is going to be immaterial compared to your ability to get things done. Like, we just recruited an analyst recently, and I met him this Monday morning because we were both the first people to reach in the office. He was early because he was new, and I was early because I just like to be there. Okay. But I ended up chatting with him, and he was a BCom graduate who knew how to be a data analyst. And our team recruited him successfully, which I believe is a commendable job by my team. But I got a good 20 minutes over coffee with him because there was nobody else in office at that time. And the fact was that it was very, very enlightening for me to see that he was a boy coming in from a tier 3 town, single mother, working to support 3 kids, studied through YouTube, got a commerce degree. In my era, when I was a college student, somebody going to commerce would be considered, they would themselves say that, computers is not our thing. We will not look into tech. That's not something that we would do. To where 15 years down the line or 20 years down the line, we are seeing such a big difference that this BCom guy coming in from a third tier 3 city is not afraid to be in a large city, in a large company, trying to be a data analyst in a field which is not technically educated into. And he's doing a commendable job. So that's why I think the background and the thirst for it matters, and that is set inside the family. So the where they are coming from is something that I genuinely like to know, because they matter. And second, I would say is in terms of I think in today's age of instant validation, where anything you put on a social media, you have instant likes, you have instant comments, instant engagement. Are we getting team players? And is this person okay with delayed gratification? Is something that I like to study and probe into, because all of this is something that will not be achieved if the team does not do its job. So from being an entrepreneur-driven business to a professionally led business, where as a family member I run certain functions inside the business, we have transitioned as a family as well. So moving in that from one thought process to other, we also want people who are good team players. So for good team players, delayed gratification is a mandatory habit that I feel is important when you want to succeed as a team. So is this quality there is something that I try to see. I think these two things matter more because they affect the culture of the company. Then all your skill sets, degrees, all your fancy colleges, they are all immaterial beyond the point. So if this work, then I think it's a great candidate to hire.
While everything looks great and year on year there is growth and there is so much of innovation that is happening, and there is, like we said, there is a huge amount of goodwill and there is a lot of empowerment for people as well. But the reality of business is that it must continue to generate a lot of value and the valuation must keep going up. When you look forward to next 5 years or 10 years, is there one big threat that you think that you and your team will always need to stay alert about and make sure you're able to mitigate those risks?
Well, I think the biggest threat I would say for Indians is the challenge of malnutrition that we are dealing with. So we have a 38% population in India which is malnourished. Be it overnourished or undernourished is again a different categorization of it. But the challenge is that that is affecting at a disruptive pace how people are consuming snacks, sweets, and many other traditional products. Right. So as traditional businesses where salty snacks, sweets are part of our mainstay in terms of how we are growing, the biggest threat that we see is in terms of the big shift in the next generation consumption patterns. So we are creating sub-brands inside the company as well to sort of mitigate this risk. But that way, what we have to be very mindful about and very alert about is that, are we not doing enough for it? And are we ensuring that we are doing enough where the next customer and today's customer are both affectionate about the brand? So that's where I see the big challenge, and that is where I think we have to keep addressing all the time.
That the generations ahead might start to turn away from processed food and carrying that perception,
which is unlikely to happen, but what they expect from processed food will be very different than what the current generation of processed food consumer does.
Very interesting. So one of the things that has happened in the recent past is, especially in your case, is that more and more focus on international markets as well, because that's where the yield is higher. Okay. The yield on a per unit sold is much higher. Absolutely. Because the cost structures are dramatically different. I'm not sure, but it is in single digits right now, contributing to the overall line.
You just hit double digits this.
Oh wow! So I was almost there. My anticipation must have been around 8 to 9%. Over a period of next 5 to 10 years, as the diaspora also continues to grow and the competition here also continues to be more and more fierce, there are going to be cost pressures. Do you anticipate this might double up in next 5 to 10 years?
No, we want to make sure that we cross a 25% threshold inside our revenue stream for Chitale Bandhu products. But along with that, what we are also building and we are working very competitively with many other brands across the world right now is in terms of collaborative efforts, where we want to internally have a parallel revenue stream which is non-Chitale products being made by Chitale under Chitale quality standards for different brands across the world, and ensuring that white labeling or collaborative more often. Okay. But where we don't necessarily, like average supermarket customer in America is not coming to buy bakarodi, for example, but they are happy buying a bar. So how can we make more bars which are more globalized in their appeal is something that we have to address, and that's why we want to have the same amount of revenue coming in from non-Chitale Bandhu branded products but made by Chitale Bandhu, as much as what we get from Chitale Bandhu as a growth trajectory as well. And that's why we have built a very comprehensive team, and we are putting in a lot of effort. And I'm personally invested into it, where we're probably traveling every month, just building this business out.
Wow, so nice. A slightly different question. At any point in time, did your propositions team consider an option of bundling together a beverage with the snack?
We
Has it
have.
happened?
We have.
There were a few demos a few years ago, if I remember.
And not just non-alcoholic beverages, we also tried with alcoholic beverages as well, and we've got good feedback for it. What we realize is that our channel and our consumers are not ready for us marketing that. So that's why what we've realized is that we bundle with other players, where we'll let them become the prime talker about the proposition, and we supply through them, and that is a good business for us.
They become your career. But a water bottle with a small Bakarwadi ka packet is a great combination, isn't it?
It is. But so is beer and Bakarwadi, which worked. So that's why that works better in Europe.
Yeah.
So we will try to utilize that as well.
So a company has to go great length to be able to cater to different types of customers with different needs, and that would mean you possibly have more than 1,000 SKUs that have to be tracked every day.
Absolutely.
And if this gets extrapolated with more and more products and more flavors getting introduced, this might soon become a 5-digit number for all you know, which means increasing the complexity of how the... At some point in time, do you think it will be worthwhile to draw a line somewhere and say that, this is the market that we are definitely not going to address?
No, in fact, we just finished our annual review because we do a calendar year review internally. Because the Indian consumer market is all Hindu calendar centric.
Yes.
And sometimes Gudi Padwa comes in the same financial year twice.
Oh yeah, correct.
So that's why we go from a January to December review mechanism internally.
Right.
And we were just checking on this aspect, and we made a scale or a data representation of what is the best revenue per square feet to range ratio for our franchisee stores. And we realized that probably the best is achieved when 85% of the products are available, not 100%.
Exactly, yeah.
So we concluded that we have to do a range rationalization this year, and probably reduce certain amount of products which are more inefficient to manufacture and not creating enough value, and either make sure that we create products which are more value driven, or just reduce the products for a year and let's see whether the ratio stays constant or not. So that is where a lot of data helps, and mining data helps, and just smart people help, I think.
Yeah. I was reading a case study recently about this brand called as Minimalist. They are the ones who have the least number of SKUs in the market, and yet they are demonstrating highest growth as compared to everybody else who has to keep investing in more colorful bottles. Absolutely. And so different SKUs. So at some point in time, you hit the peak and then you try and plateau down to enhance the efficiency.
So now what we've realized is that different business avenues require different perspectives. Like a store business, the customer wants to see the range because they are coming to see the brand and the range, and they are coming with an informed idea that I want to shop at this brand.
Yes.
What can we make them shop more is what we have to do.
Yes.
When it comes to the distribution business, that is not the case because the consumer is going for their need, and I mean it's 2,000 brands. We have to make our space to be bought in that customer basket.
Yeah.
So the approach there is that we can't confuse the customer with a choice. We make a very hit product, and we make sure that if the consumer wants to buy that category, we own the category. So that's why what works in one channel does not necessarily translate into the same channel, and overlapping this is where I think the management plays a crucial role.
Yeah, and also optimizing the coca eventually for every rupee that you spend.
Absolutely.
It was such an enriching episode for me, and there are so many interesting stories that Indraneel shared with us. Here are my 3 key takeaways from today's episode. Takeaway number 1, perseverance. It is a virtue that you can also be blessed with if you practice it. One of the points that he highlighted was that people who are used to a delayed gratification become much more impactful team players, and that plays a really important role when you are marching ahead on the path of growth. The second one is about the basics, that even though there are trends that keep coming in and going out in the marketplace from time to time, but the basics remain the same, so stay focused. For example, the digital channels will continue to demonstrate growth, but the conventional channels are here to stay, so don't lose focus. And the third one that I really like is his focus on fitness. When you focus on personal fitness, it starts to reflect in your professional fitness, and then it starts to reflect in how people around you look at fitness as their own personal goal. So keep influencing them in a positive way. That's it for now, and I look forward to meeting up with you in the next episode of Pathfinders. Until then, keep scaling up.